Okay, welcome back. This is section 4.1, part 2. And we started out, I showed you how to set up the matrix for example 1. I'm going to show you a couple more of how to set it up, and then I'm actually going to do one long problem. Okay, so I'm going to try to keep this simple. When I look at this, I see, first of all, these two are always going to be the case. They don't really figure into your matrix down here. You just can't do the problem without it. So look at the error 2. I see a 1 and a 1 and a 1 and a 2. That's from the coefficients. And then from the profit function, I've got 3 and 4. So down here I'm going to put -3 and -4. Somewhere over here is going to be the 20 and 25. But in between all of that, I've got to put that identity. It's 3 rows, so that means I'm going to have 3 columns. So 1, 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 0, 0, 1. Then I got 20, 25, and this one is always a 0. That's how you set that one up. That's all there is to it. Okay, let's put that one away. Okay, here's another one. Okay, so look here, here's your x greater than or equal to 0, y greater than or equal to 0. So I see 2, 3, somewhere over there's going to be a 12. 2, 1, and somewhere over there's going to be an 8. My profit function, 3x plus 2y, tells me to put a -3 and a -2. You just take the opposites, put them down there. 3 rows, so that means it's going to be a 3 by 3 identity. And then the last column is going to have the 12, the 8, and the 0. So you break it up into sections, and that'll help you out. If you think of it like this, there's your coefficients. These you get from the profit function. There's your identity. And then you get the last numbers. Okay, here's another one I got. I think this one's in the book. Okay, so I'm going to start out. Okay, now I got x, y, and z, so I'm going to have 1, -1, and 2. Somewhere over there's going to be a 10. I'm going to have 2, 1, 3. Somewhere there's going to be a 12. Notice I've got x greater than or equal to 0, y greater than or equal to 0, and I have z greater than or equal to 0. From the profit function, I got 1, 2, and 1 here, so that means down here I'm going to put -1, -2, -1. 3 rows tells you it's going to be a 3 by 3 identity. And then my last numbers, 10, 12, and 0. Okay, so I spent a lot of time setting it up. Now I'm going to go back to this one, and this is in the book. I don't particularly like the way it's put in the book, but it is the same problem. So if I went back to set this one up again, so I'm going to have 6, 3, 1, 1, 2, 6. I want to have -80 to make my bracket big enough, -70. Now I've got 4 rows there, so that tells me this is going to be a 4 by 4. And then the last numbers would be 96, looking right here, 18, 72, and the bottom one's always a 0. So that's going to get us started. Okay, now what? Well, now we're going to kind of follow what we did with Gaussian, but not quite the same. Usually with Gaussian, we always start with a 1 up here in the upper left-hand corner. That's not true with the simplex method. I have to do a little more. Okay, first of all, on the bottom, you have a string of numbers. Some of them are negative. I want the biggest negative. That's what I call it. The biggest negative in this case is negative 80. When I say biggest negative, that means the one that's more negative than anything else. Okay, wherever the biggest negative is, then that column is what you call a pivot column. One of these numbers will end up becoming our pivot. Which one? Well, now we're going to go over here and we're going to find what we call our ratios. So I'm going to take the 96, I'm going to divide it by, now you go here and find the column again, your pivot column, that's 6. I'm going to divide by 6. 96 divided by 6 is 16. Then I'm going to take 18 divided by 1. That's equal to 18. And then 72 divided by 2 is 36. And the bottom, we're going to have 0 on top, so that's just going to be 0. We don't really use the bottom number, because now I'm going to look for the smallest positive. If you'll remember, I didn't write it down here, but down here we found the biggest negative. Over here we want the smallest positive. So out of these numbers, smallest positive would be 16. That means the top row becomes my pivot column, or my pivot row. And then by doing that, see where the row and the column intersect? This number right here, I'm going to circle it just to emphasize, but normally we don't circle that. That's where I want my pivot. It just happens to be in the top row, first element, upper left-hand corner, but we don't always start there. Okay, now what? Well, so I did all that because now I want to get a 1 there. How do you get a 1? Well, you multiply by the reciprocal. So you're going to take 1/6 of row 1. So it's going to give us 1. 1/6 of 6 is 1. That's going to be a half. 1/6 of 1 is 1/6. Then I got 0, 0, 0, and 1/6 of 96 is 16. Second row stays the same, so I'm just copying these numbers down. Third row stays the same, so I'm copying these numbers down. And the bottom row is the same. Okay, now just like Gaussian, what do you do once you get the 1? You get a 1, then you get some zeros. Okay, so top row is going to stay the same. You're going to find it's very important if you can kind of keep these organized and put in the right rows and columns. I'm doing that was a 16, sorry. So to get a 0 where the 1 is, I want to take negative row 1 plus row 2. So negative 1 and 1 is 0. Negative 1/2 and 1 is 1/2. Negative 1/6 and 0 is negative 1/6. 0 and 1 is 1. 0 and 0 is 0. 0 and 0 is 0. Negative 16 plus 18 is 2. Third row. I want to get a 0 where the 2 is, so I'm going to take negative 2 times row 1 plus row 3. Put the answers in row 3. So negative 2 times 1 is negative 2 plus positive 2 is 0. Move this up a little bit. Negative 2 times 1/2 is negative 1. Negative 1 plus 6 is 5. Negative 2 times 1/6 is negative 1/3 plus 0 is negative 1/3. Negative 2 times 0 is 0 plus 0 is 0. Negative 2 times 0 is 0 plus 1 is 1. Negative 2 times 0 is 0 plus 0 is 0. Negative 2 times 16 is negative 32. Negative 32 plus 72 is 40. And the bottom row, I've got negative 80 down here. I'm going to have to multiply 80 times row 1 plus row 4. 80 times 1 is 80 plus negative 80 is 0. 80 times 1/2 is 40. 40 plus negative 70 is negative 30. 80 times 1/6, that's 80 over 6 or 40 over 3 plus 0 is 40 over 3. 80 times 0 is 0 plus 0 is 0. 80 times 0 is 0 plus 0 is 0. 80 times 0 is 0 plus 1 is still 1. And 80 times 16. Get the calculator out here real quick. 80 times 16. And I've got 1280 plus 0 is 1, 2, 8, 0. So what's happened? Well, we went through what we call an iteration. You don't necessarily need to know that, but that's what it's called. An iteration is the same as a cycle. Just like what we did with Gaussian. We got a 1, we got some zeros. We get a 1, we got a zeros. We get another 1, you get zeros. You go through that cycle over and over again until you get what you want. Now, once you finish with a cycle, what you really need to do is look at it and say, are you done? You'll know you're done when you have no negatives on the bottom. Well, we've still got a negative 30 here, so we are not done. Okay, so we start the process over again. So looking up here, we want to find what we do first. We found the biggest negative up at the top. Try to get all this in here. So back here we had the biggest negative. So down here, the biggest negative, there's only one of them. So that tells me that's my pivot column. And it's important for you to circle those. That way I know I can follow your work. So if you're turning things into me, that's what I'm looking for. Okay. I'm also looking for the ratios. So here you had 16, that's a 16, divided by 1/2. 16 divided by 1/2 is 32. 2 divided by 1/2 is 4. And 40 divided by 5 is 8. Okay, over here we want the, what we do, the smallest positive. So you look at these numbers here. We're not looking at that one. Smallest one's going to be 4. So that tells me there's my pivot row. And the 1/2 is what we're going to make into a 1. In other words, we're going to pivot off of that number. Okay. So top row is going to stay the same. Really trying to make this neat for you. Math teachers and doctors tend to not be very neat. Okay, so the middle row, I want to get a 1 there, so I'm going to take 2 times row 2. So 2 times 0 is 0. 2 times 1/2 is 1. That's my pivot. Remember to circle your pivots. 2 times negative 1/6 is negative 1/3. 2 times 1 is 2, and then you're going to have 0, 0, and 2 times 2 is 4. And these stay the same. I'm just going to do it this way. Okay, get rid of that one now. Okay, now we're going to pivot off of the 1. Okay, so we need to get a 0 where the 1/2 is. So I'm going to multiply negative 1/2 times row 2, add it to row 1. If you picked up on Gaussian and followed the rules there, this is not very hard. It's almost the same thing. The only thing that's different is knowing where the 1's going to be. Okay, so negative 1/2 times 0, 0, plus 1, still 1. Negative 1/2 times 1 is negative 1/2, plus positive 1/2 is 0. Negative 1/2 times negative 1/3, that's 1/6. 1/6 plus 1/6 is 2/6, or in lowest terms, that's 1/3. Negative 1/2 times 2 is negative 1. Negative 1 plus 0 is negative 1. Then you have 0, 0. Negative 1/2 times 4 is negative 2. Negative 2 plus 16 is 14. Second row stays the same because that's where your 1 was at. Third row, we want to get a 0 here. We have to multiply by negative 5. So that's negative 5 times row 2 plus row 3. So 0 and 0 is 0. Negative 5 times 1 is negative 5, plus positive 5 is 0. Negative 5 times negative 1/3 is positive 5/3. 5/3 plus negative 1/3 is going to be 4/3. Negative 5 times 2 is negative 10. Negative 10 plus 0 is negative 10. Negative 5 times 0 is 0, plus 1 is still 1. Negative 5 times 0 is 0, plus 0 is 0. And negative 5 times 40, what am I doing? Negative 5 times 4 is negative 20. Negative 20 plus 40 is 20. Okay, and then the bottom row. Got to get a 0 here. We're going to multiply by 30. So that's 30 times row 2 plus row 4. 30 times 0 is 0, plus 0 is 0. 30 times 1 is 30, plus negative 30 is 0. 30 times negative 1/3. Think of that as negative 30 over 3. negative 30 over 3 plus 40 over 3 is going to be 10 over 3. If you have trouble seeing that, go off to the side and work it out. 30 times 2 is 60 plus 0 is 60. 30 times 0 is 0 plus 0 is 0. 30 times 0 is 0 plus 1 is 1. And 30 times 4 is 120. 120 plus 1280 is 1400. Okay, and we're done. How did I know I was done? Because when I look at the bottom row, there's no negatives. No negatives on the bottom row tells you you're done. So now what are the answers? Well, the max on this one, talking about the maximum profit, is always the lower right-handed number. So that's 1400. And that's dollars, $1,400. At, now we got to know what X and Y are. Okay, now this is a little tricky. On this, the problem I got here, it's going to work out okay. But remember earlier, and I was kind of labeling columns, and that was the X column, and that was the Y column. So when you look at the X column, this is what you call a unit column. A unit column has exactly 1, 1, and everything else zeros. The Y column is also a unit column. I've got 1, 1, and everything else is zeros. If it was not a unit column, I'll come back on this later, but if it's not a unit column, then that variable is automatically 0. Okay, that's not the case on this one. Okay, so in the X column, the 1 is here. So if I go straight across from the 1, that's going to tell me what X is. X equals 14. In the Y column, the 1 is here. I go all the way across, Y is 4. So you could take and write that as an ordered pair, 14, comma 4. I don't really care. See, the important things on the answer is the maximum and then where it hits. Those are the two things. Because if you put it in perspective, there's actually people that have a job, they get paid to do this stuff. And the factory is building something, manufacturing something, whatever it is. And these people go through and they actually tell the boss, say, okay, we need to make so many of these and so many of those. So in this problem, I think that was sofas and chairs. So they're telling them we need to aim towards 14 sofas and 4 chairs and you'll make the most money. You're being efficient. You're working with whatever they're giving you, your resources, because they're limited. And this is utilizing your resources and making you the most money if we make this much for that. Okay, so the big thing in section 1 is taking, for example, this one, taking the inequalities and write them in matrix form. And then once you have it in matrix form, is taking it the whole way through. It's probably too long, I know. But taking the whole way through, and it took 5 matrices to get all that done. So in the second section, we're going to spend more time on what I just showed you on how to go through and work the matrices. And then in section 3, instead of maximizing, we go to minimizing. It should all go pretty quick for you. It is a quick chapter. Couple things I know, you're going to have a lot of fractions. And if you're not very good at fractions, you're just going to have to really work on it and get through it because we do a lot with fractions. Otherwise, just try to follow the rules that go with it and do the best you can. Okay, that's it.